Good people, I'm Dmitry, and today we have something really interesting. We'll be checking out 3 weird, unique ITX cases that we're super happy we did not miss out on. They fit into an even smaller niche within the whole ITX space, and the cases are probably not for you, but if they are, you're in for a treat. Let's check them out. So the 3 cases are the AZA Pyramid Mini 806. We have the radio-like spaceship-looking InWin B1. And probably the most normal out of the 3 is the new Case V4. I'm excited to break down exactly why these cases are so interesting. Let's check them out right after this. The Razer Viper Ultimate, the lightest and fastest wireless mouse designed for esports with an accurate Focus Plus 20K DPI optical sensor, Razer hyperspeed wireless technology that is 25% faster than the competition, all packed into a lightweight body with optical mouse switches. Check it out below. So let's begin this weird ITX compilation with the Pyramid Mini 806. A larger alternative is already available in the market, but the ITX version is going to cost $250, which is, yes, very expensive, but this is what you pay for something that is so unique. Don't be buying this for performance sake, it's all about the visuals. In terms of build quality and materials, we have tempered glass on all 4 sides, therefore revealing the entire system from all angles, and I do appreciate that the tempered glass and the aluminum meet at the bottom that kind of hide all that cable mess that sits in the bottom chamber. There are some steel elements in the frame too, but majority of it is aluminum and glass, which feels pretty premium. Getting inside the enclosure is pretty interesting. We have 2 captive thumb screws on 2 of the sides. If you don't have dainty fingers like me, you will need to tilt the enclosure in order to access it, and then you simply lift off the pyramid shell. Overall, it's a pretty easy case to work in. Both the fan platform at the top and the motherboard tray are removable, although the motherboard tray doesn't have to be removed for installation, as everything pretty much fits in between the frame. In terms of hardware compatibility, we have SFX power supply, we have GPUs up to 300mm, we have CPU towers up to 85mm or a 120mm all-in-one cooler. For storage, we have a bracket that houses 2 vertical SSDs. I would advise against installing SSDs, potentially go with an M.2 on your motherboard just to minimize all your SATA cable clutter in that main visible section. Now, given the shape and airflow channels, going with an actual CPU tower cooler is most likely not advisable, so I did install a 120mm all-in-one cooler with radiator facing up, and we are utilizing the included 120mm digital RGB fan up top for exhaust. It must connect to the addressable header on the motherboard for it to pass any RGB illumination, and you can use one of the pyramid sides for cable management, as there is a built-in cover that you have to screw in, and it's an easy way to hide one of the fan cables. The assembly procedure is straightforward as long as you follow a particular step-by-step, like installing your motherboard first, installing the GPU second, and routing that included Razer cable. Then mounting the fan platform inside was a bit tricky just because you have to hold all 3 components, the fan, the platform, and the radiator together, mount that inside the frame, and only then secure it to the actual frame. And the last thing is to mount the power supply and route all your cables as cleanly as possible, and given everything is exposed, it's really up to you to make sure it looks good. I will mention the plastic housing around the power connector and the back of my power supply had interfered with that bracket, which isn't all that fun because the power supply was not completely flat to the bracket. And once the system was assembled, the Pyramid is a really unique take on an ITX computer. Because of the larger square footprint at the bottom, it does occupy roughly the same footprint on your desk as a regular mid-tower, but obviously the computer case itself is intended to be the centerpiece and not exactly the hardware that's inside. And given all 4 sides are transparent, having any sort of illumination on your motherboard, on your RAM, on your cooler is an added bonus for a little bling on the interior. The I/O, unfortunately, is pretty limited with a single USB 3 port, combo audio jack, and a power button, which is actually something that all these cases share. With this open style case, there are no dust filters aside from the one at the bottom of the GPU, which isn't all that accessible once the actual graphics card is installed. The really interesting thing here are the temperature results. At stock configuration, both CPU and GPU were at 84 degrees Celsius, pretty toasty, but removing the top shell dropped our temperatures significantly. One of the reasons is the GPU doesn't really have much airflow to deal with, and given my graphics card design, it's actually intaking whatever hot air is being generated at the bottom of the motherboard. So it doesn't really help there. So don't treat this as a performance case, instead treat it as a visual presentation piece in your PC space. I appreciate Azza for taking the risk and continuing with the pyramid style of cases. Just keep in mind, cooling is not very good. It's a pretty toasty oven inside, and it's really up to you to make it look good in terms of cable management and the hardware that you choose to put inside the Mini 806. And now, good people, let's move on to the InWin B1, which many people have confused for a Bluetooth speaker, for a radio, for a heater, because it is one of the most unique and weird looking ITX cases. It's only $89, so it's not too expensive if you want to venture out and doing something different. The interesting thing here is that the frame is made entirely of plastic, and the only thing saving it from feeling too cheap is the tempered glass side panel up top. Just like the Pyramid, we only have a single USB 3 port, a combo audio jack, and a power button that is illuminated in blue. But it's all about the design and the form factor, given the almost ventilated looking strips running throughout the entire front and sides. You can position the case horizontally or vertically with the included plastic base. And if you do go with the vertical orientation, you can remove the plastic feet from the bottom plate, so the other side looks clean. Also, when the case is in the vertical orientation, it can be used as a headphone stand. Pretty cool. And the intent with the B1 is for it to be a light home theater PC that can blend inside your living room, but also have a little bit of flair. Since the B1 has no space for a dedicated GPU because of its form factor, this is the perfect size for an AMD APU system, especially with the upcoming Renoir series that look really promising and powerful. To get inside, you remove 2 screws and simply pop off the top shell. And for the $89 price point, you not only get the case, you get a 200 watt gold rated power supply. There's a dust filter near the power supply that can be removed for cleaning, and on the opposite side there's an 80mm fan for exhaust. Motherboard support here is ITX, and the cables from the power supply are long enough to reach whatever corner you need. CPU towers up to 60mm are supported, so most AMD and Intel stock coolers are totally fine here. And for storage, you remove the bottom plate where the feet are connected, and you can mount 2.5-inch SSDs or hard drives with the little slot underneath the motherboard open, so if you do mount an M.2 slot, that is also accessible here. One cable management tip with the B1 case is that you can use the SATA cables and the USB 3 cable to wrap around your 24-pin and the 8-pin as a way to almost like act as zip ties and hold and bunch up all those cables in front enclosure so they don't go anywhere. So it is a pretty unique ITX enclosure from InWin, made of plastic and glass. And cooling wise, when I was running a YouTube video in the background, my temperatures dropped 4 degrees Celsius when the top shell was open. So don't go crazy with hardware, as the little fan inside can get pretty loud. And lastly, let's talk about the really awesome enthusiast focus DAN Case V4. There's already a V4.1 available that have upgraded the PCI Razer cable to Gen 4 and also the Type-C in the front to USB 3.2 Gen 2, unlike on my version, which is just Gen 1. The case costs over $200, which is a bit on the pricey side, but that is the price you pay for this ITX niche space. And the build quality is all aluminum, fantastic execution. The main thing with the DAN case is its compact form factor that can still support GPUs up to 300mm. So the main advantage here would be its compact footprint on your desk that still looks elegant and is available both in black or silver. In terms of power supplies, you can do SFX or SFXL. For storage, we have this bracket that can house 2 SSDs, but is not compatible if you're going with an SFXL power supply, so that is why we have an additional slot for an SSD on the front panel. While the rest of the cooling options are plenty to fit your build style. For example, for CPU heatsinks, we have up to 48mm, and recommended heatsinks are listed on their website. You can also install a 92mm all-in-one cooler below the power supply if you remove that SSD caddy and use an SFX power supply. You can install an additional 15mm 92mm fan below the motherboard. You can also go with a 120mm all-in-one cooler on the GPU side, as long as your GPU dimensions are lower and you meet the thickness criteria for both the fan and the radiator. The case comes with a protective film just in case your GPU doesn't have a backplate, so it will prevent from shorts with the aluminum. The riser cable for the GPU is included too, and once everything is complete and assembled, this kind of exceeded my expectations, as I was expecting it to be more challenging to build in and more challenging to route everything. But if you're using shorter cables, maybe thin profile cables like I did here too, you wouldn't have any issues. Since the case is perforated on all sides except for the front, expect dust accumulation over time, but since the volume isn't that large, cleaning shouldn't be a problem. Now the compromise here would be cooling for the CPU, because we don't have that many good low profile coolers, so you have to go with something a little bit less powerful on the CPU side. But the GPU, since we have that full perforation on the side, has a lot of cooling potential. With my RTX 2060 Super, I was hovering around 76 degrees Celsius at full load, but removing the side panel did give me a 14-degree drop, which is pretty significant, but still with undervolting and playing around with the fan curve, this for a gaming machine in this form factor is totally acceptable. My entire experience with the den case was flawless. Really loved the experience of removing the screws and just going step by step, taking it slowly and really working the case for what it's designed for. I mean, the end result is beautiful, it's powerful, it's elegant, and yes, it's a bit on the expensive side, but that's what you get for just over 7 liters of an enclosure that can fit a full-size graphics card. So there you have it, guys. Our weird compilation on these ITX enclosures. Really happy that we didn't miss out on these just to experience something completely new and different. I'm 100% keeping the den case, maybe building something in here for a really portable editing or gaming machine. The B1 with an APU can live inside my living room as a home theater PC, and the Pyramid looks fantastic as a background on videos. I don't know, we'll see. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'm Dmitry. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next video.